I want to talk about the concept of smooth or smoothness in a hack. I feel like I'm the only person that says this, but I think I should try and make myself clear because I think it's an important, even if we don't agree that smooth is the right term, the concept I think is really key when we describe our hacks. I think a hack generally being smooth is really key for the overall enjoyment of the experience. So you might be able to discern what smooth means, but let's take it a step further. This should be a pretty short one. What are we talking about? What is smooth? And for me, when I think about smooth in a hack, I'm thinking that the hack is being easy to play. And this comes from a number of different dimensions. It generally means that if the hack is smooth, it means there are a few points where I want to give up. There are few points where it's like really rough to push on and get through. And it's generally like straightforward, easy to play. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's not hard. Like you could be a smooth hack and have high difficulty. Difficulty is one dimension that can make a hack less smooth, but it's not mutually exclusive. So if the hack is smooth, it's easy to get play, it's easy to get into, and you're just moving. You're just moving through. You can rip through chapters, and that kind of progression is really satisfying. So let's talk about some other elements of it. So I think most importantly, for me, a smooth hack is where there are a few points that the player would want to drop the hack at. For me, when I'm in my flow and I'm just ripping through chapters, that's the best. When I'm enjoying the game and I want to keep playing and I don't feel like the game is making it hard for me to enjoy it. I think Journeys by Relic does a great job. I think it's a very smooth hack. The maps are generally quick, they're snappy, there aren't many like crazy difficulty spikes that make me like need to like stop and reconsider my life for a bit, or like, you know, make me feel regret for actions I've done in the past. So Journeys, I think, is smooth. Road to Ruin is relatively smooth as well. And a lot of times smoothness comes down to like not having that like late game slog. And you see this in like The Last Promise, where there's a massive difficulty spike towards the end and it becomes a lot harder and the maps get a lot bigger and it just takes a lot longer. And it's like, you might think, oh, I have 5 chapters left, let's go. But they're like 10 chapters worth of content packed into 5 chapters, and we don't need that. It makes it less smooth of an experience. So when your hack is smooth, it has few points where players want to drop the hack. And you'll pick this up by watching and hearing people complain, but also just like knowing like, where did you drop? Oh, I dropped it at this point. Like I got to this map and I said no more. They hit a roadblock. The road stopped being smooth. Oops, did not mean to do that. So what's next? Maps don't drag on for too long or have difficulty spikes. So again, kind of keeping that, as you can see on my cursor, even, nice and smooth. Maybe there's a nice difficulty curve that kind of just goes up instead of just like spike, you know, all over the place. And the smoothness is important in making the hack playable. The hack's got to be playable. When I say the hack is very playable, it means it's smooth. It means it's easy to get into. It means that over the course, and we talk about this a lot, right? We talk about like, how do we make this chapter good? But what does that chapter by chapter flow look like? And as I'm designing the chapter, am I considering what comes before and after it and how fatigued the player might be? This is why like I think breather maps can be important at times, because they just allow the player to kind of get back into the swing of things after like a tough section. They can pick up some momentum and be like, yeah, let's keep going. If there's like hard map after hard map after hard map after hard map, and hard is in like mentally exhausting but also lengthy, that's going to be a problem, because at that point the player might say like, I can't keep up with this. This isn't smooth. I'm putting way too much effort in and it's taking too long. Creating something that is smooth, chapter by chapter, you can do it by just keeping an eye on like, how long does it take to beat this chapter on average? How painful are mistakes when I make them? In the sense of if I let this unit die in the last turn, am I going to be screwed later on? Am I inherently making my experience less smooth? Because resetting isn't really smooth. No one wants to reset. At least, like, I don't know. I can't imagine anyone being like, yeah, I'll reset and, like, I'm excited to play this map again. Like, that doesn't happen very often. The player shouldn't feel like they have to reset. If the player has to reset, then your hack isn't very smooth. If the player can move forward without resetting, that's usually, like, a sign that the hack is a bit smoother because you have a bit more wiggle room to continue to press forward. And I think that's really key. Like, if someone can rip through your hack quickly and not have to, like, reset a bunch or have, like, you know, major stopping points, right? Like, we want to feel like we're progressing through chapter by chapter. And a smooth hack will make it easy to do so. And, like, I feel this a lot, like, when I'm playing a hack and I'm enjoying it and it's easy to play. And not necessarily that it isn't hard, like, you still have to think, right? But if I can go through it without feeling like I need to take a break or I need to stop, that's really important. And I think it's really understated. So keep that in mind. I think with smoothness, you just want to keep the hack on an even keel as much as possible. Be mindful of difficulty spikes. Be mindful of, like, having too many, like, super hard chapters in a row. Be mindful of chapter length. And keep the difficulty curve in mind. Like, is the difficulty curve smooth throughout? Is the hack going to be easy for the player to, like, get into? Or is the map designed in such a way where, like, the player has to play a certain way and it's very rigid and it's puzzly? Or it just isn't necessarily something that they can, like, lock into very quickly? I don't know. I don't know if this is necessarily something that every hack needs to be, but I think, for me, my personal opinion is that when the hack is smooth and I can glide on through it, I have a better time. Like, when I played Road to Ruin, when I played Journeys, there were very few points in the hack where I was like, I'm done. I need a break. I'm dropping this. It's too much. And usually for me, like, when I want to drop the hack, it's not even because it's hard, it's because it just stops being smooth. It just takes me too long to, like, feel like I'm progressing. And part of that's, like, setting the expectation, right? Like, Souls of the Forest is hard. And you know it's going to be hard, and it's very hard up front. And it's very clear about that. None of the maps ever take super long, if you know what you're doing. It can be taxing, but it's overall smooth, because it's that same expectation throughout. So that player expectation of difficulty and of the mental energy they need to exert to play your game is really key. And keeping that consistent throughout. So I guess in short, don't make your chapters too long. I think that'll help with smoothness. I think being mindful of, like, when you, like, dial up enemy stats is key, and how you do so. I think gradual is better than spiking it up at a random point, like a lot of vanilla games do. There's some things to keep in mind. I think one of the things I find troubling with Thracia is that I don't think Thracia is very smooth. There's a lot of points in Thracia where it's, like, kind of slow, or it's hard to get through, or, like, a mistake is really painful, or you get sucker punched, and it's like, man, that's tough. It's one of my favorite games, but it's tough. And I think I would play Thracia a lot more if it was smoother. And I think that's one of the reasons why I, like, will very often go back and pick up, like, FE7, because it's generally pretty smooth until the end. FE9 also generally pretty smooth until, like, after Daybreak, where the maps start to get too big and become grind fests. So keep these things in mind, right? Like, what are points that you find yourself wanting to drop the game at, and what can you do to not mimic that behavior that the game is performing? So keep that in mind. Like, I think about, like, the TLP difficulty spike. It's notorious. How do I avoid that in my own work to keep the player just, like, moving forward and feeling like they're progressing through the game? And sometimes making the experience smooth is cutting stuff out and ending it earlier. Other times it's, like, being mindful of your overall difficulty and being like, do I need to do this to make the map work this way? Do I need this type of enemy? Do I need the map to be this big? Do I need the map to go on for this long? Etc., etc. So keep smoothness in mind. This was a short one, but I wanted to just articulate my thoughts on this concept because I've been using it a lot lately. and I thought I'd make myself clear for what I mean when I'm talking about the smoothness of a hack. Is it playable? Can I rip through it? Is it easy for me to lock myself in and enjoy and just like want to play through for hours on end? That's really key. Can I build that momentum, right? Like, I think about how like at some points in hacks I can play like 3 or 4 hours straight without stopping, and other points I'm like after 20 minutes like, okay, that's enough. How do we avoid that? So that's my spiel on smoothness. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you next time.